I'm gonna tell you exactly how I went from 0 to 7 million a month and then why I shut it down and how this led me to the biggest lesson I've ever learned in business. But to really grasp this lesson and understand how you can use it to either start your business or scale up your business, we need to start at the beginning of my journey. So in 2019, I quit my job as a sales rep and I started a small sales coaching business. So I was helping entrepreneurs, reps, and sales teams close more deals, redo their sales process, stuff like that. So within 2 days, I did 72 grand, collected 72 grand within 2 days of launching. So pretty good. Within 2 months, I was doing about 100 grand a month on average, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the month. So initially I had a lot of success, but I had a big problem. And that problem was, as I knew my sales coaching offer wasn't going to be scalable. It wasn't something that was going to hit 8 figures. And the reason why I knew that is, number one, none of my competitors at the time had ever gotten paid ads to work. And so, or really any sort of cold acquisition to work. So generally what works really well with cold acquisition is like big TAM consumer offers. So like biz op relationships, hello, something like that. Or if you're doing a service, something that's like a SaaS or done for you or close to done for you for like B2B-ish type of offers. So I was kind of in the middle of that, right? I wasn't doing anything totally done for them, but it also wasn't this thing that had a huge TAM, okay? And so the reason I was actually doing well though, I mean, I was doing 100 grand a month, right? You're like, okay, that's nice. The reason I was able to do that though was really just because of my organic content. People knew, like, and trust me, and that's why they wanted to bring me in. And, they watch my content, watch my sales training and be like, oh, this guy's really good. I wanted them to do some call reviews for my sales team. But when I went to colder markets, it was much harder to sell and people were much less interested. So how did I make this pivot to make it more scalable? Well, my big breakthrough was, at the time, I was getting tons of requests from clients and peers, and they would all say, hey, do you know where I can find good sales reps? Do you know any good sales reps? Where can I find setters? Where can I find closers? Is there anybody you could refer to me? I was getting probably like 3 to 5, sometimes daily requests, multiple per day, of asking, or people asking me, do you know where I can find good sales reps? And the only sales trainer, the other reason is, the only sales trainer at the time I observed who had paid ads working was doing sales recruiting. There was no one else in the market besides this one person. And I looked at how they were doing it and I felt I could do it differently and better by adding in the consulting elements I was already doing, but bolting on sales recruiting. So I tested this, and the way I tested it was I made one direct post to my audience on Facebook. And it was basically like, hey, read this if you need setters. I'm going to place setters in your business. It was a very direct post. And that one post generated 170 grand. This was 175 grand. This was June of 2020, actually. So that one post, I was like, holy crap, I'm onto something. And this brings me to phase 2, which I call the explosion. Okay. So in the next 12 months, I went from 150 grand a month all the way to 2.5 million a month. I got paid ads working. I started building a team, building leaders in the team. I mean, it was like a blitz scale to 150K a month to 2.5 million a month within 12 months. And the biggest lesson I learned from this is, man, product market fit is everything. I mean, the difference between a mediocre offer and a phenomenal offer isn't just like 2 to 3 times the results. It can literally be 1,000x the results. And you can have the best marketing and sales system in the world, but if you have a bad offer with that, it's kind of like putting a lipstick on a pig. So the other thing I want to mention too, just so you have context on my story, is during this 12-month span, we spun out a second business called RCA, which is basically a consumer business training sales reps on how to sell, okay? And how to sell, how to get into the high-ticket industry, and how to land a gig. Okay, so those two businesses, my B2B recruiting and my B2C sales certification, that's what really helped me go from 150 grand a month to 2.5 million a month. And really, if you're just wondering, it was about a 50% revenue split. So they're very, very even. Okay, so at the end of 2021, I was doing about 2.5 million a month. End of 2022, we were doing about 3.9 million a month. We never broke 4 million with these two combined, but we were super close. I think the highest month was like 3.97. So we were super close. And that brings me to phase 3, where we started doing a bunch of dumb stuff. It's like success was the biggest issue, and my ambition started to get the best of me, and I started making a ton of mistakes. And one of the things I want to share is they all stemmed from one limiting belief. And that limiting belief, which does have some validity to it, but it has always been like just the bane of my existence. It's just caused so many mistakes for me. That limiting belief is I always would think this company will never scale to X, Y, and Z revenue. It could, and I'll tell you, it was different levels of revenue. But this won't scale to the next level because it's a service-based company. It's too operationally complex, and there's too small of a TAM. I either need to do a SaaS or I need to do something bigger. I need to do something that could scale to 9 figures. Like, this isn't going to be it. And just to show you how much of a recurring issue this was for me, even when we were doing 100 to 200 grand a month, I was like, man, we'll have to do something different because this will never get to 500. But then we broke to 500. I was like, well, this will probably do 500, but it'll never do $1 million a month. Then we hit $1 million a month. This will never do more than $1 million a month. It'll just be a nice $10 million a year business. It will never get to 20 million. Then we got to 20 million. Now we're, then at one point it gets to 30 million, right? So it kept breaking through and breaking through and breaking through. But at the end of 2022, when we were doing about 3.9 million a month, that's when I was really like, okay, I just don't know how much longer this can go. Like, sure, it can scale further, but we got to do something radically different. And finally, this limiting belief really got me. Okay, so what did I decide to do? What was kind of the pivot? Well, I decided to build a holdco, right? So if you don't know what that is, basically it's like a holding company where what we did is we took 20 to 40% equity in our top clients in the B2B business. And in exchange for that 20 to 40% equity, we would do done for you sales and done for you marketing for their business. Okay. So, in business, there's marketing, sales, operations, fulfillment, finance. In certain businesses, there's different departments like IT, development, product, et cetera. In the businesses we were doing, it was basic service-based businesses. So it was marketing, sales, operations, fulfillment, finance. We would take care of the marketing and sales. So this sounds super duper smart, right? Like, if you go to a mastermind, which I went to plenty of them, and I'd tell people and bounce people off, bounce this idea off of them, people would tell me all the time, oh yeah, that's such a good idea. Oh, that's super smart. Like, oh, now you're playing at a finally high level. I would talk to people worth over $100 million and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's like the best idea ever. And it's true. I mean, people do make billions of dollars with private equity and holdcos. Like, it's all the rage on Twitter and social media. There's a ton of people doing it. There's a ton of people crushing it. Hormozi's crushing it with it. But here's the thing. What they don't tell you is, like, if you have a bunch of stuff going on and you have a ton of businesses already and you're the operator in those businesses and you're an operator by nature, not an investor, it's really freaking hard. Okay. So you'll see this, I start to succeed with this, but it's going to start to become my downfall a little bit later. So anyways, we launched the holdco. We made eight acquisitions in 6 months. So that's my first mistake. We went way too fast. And some of the things we found is, number one, and especially in hindsight, the learning lessons were, number one, finding the right deals is insanely hard. Like, finding a deal where it's the right business, the right opportunity, has the right growth opportunity, and you have the right amount of equity, and the founder is like a complete badass. Even with our top 1% of clients, I mean, it's super tough, okay? Then also, integration is really hard. So imagine, like, we're doing these acquisitions so fast and integrating and taking over all of the marketing and sales and then getting them initial results. Also, just like integrating that quickly, so with so many different companies, very hard. And then, as you can tell, we went super fast. We had a ton of false urgency, and that false urgency led to a lot of bad negotiation where we are basically doing half of the business for very little of the profit. I mean, we were doing 20 to 40%, and we're definitely doing 50% or more of the work. But anyhow, we did it. And what was crazy is despite all those mistakes, on average, we grew every company by about 2 to 4x, some much more than that, as you'll see. But every company at least doubled. A lot of them tripled or 4x'd pretty quickly just by us taking over the sales team. And you know what? That's like what we do best. So I kind of expected that. Now, here's the problem, though, is we, with all these companies together, I mean, we were probably pacing to do 25, 40 million a year with like everything together. I mean, that's not my other businesses. That's just the holdco. But because we had such a small sliver of the equity, we were making, like, when it's all said and done and you factor in profit margins and ad costs and all these things, we were making like 250 to 300 grand a month with our profit split. So I was looking at that, my partner was looking at that, and we're like, man, this is like tons of work. We're basically doing all the marketing and sales done for you for 8 different companies. We might as well just start at a new company. Like, this is way too much work. And that's, again, because we didn't really negotiate the deals the right way. And in addition, the other main issue we found at this point is that none of the businesses except for one had 9-figure or exit potential. So, and the reason why is all of the businesses except for one were basically like info or kind of like coaching type of businesses, which have a lot of key man risk. They're very hard to exit. And they're also, unless you just have a complete like banger offer and badass founder, they're very hard to scale past like up 1.5 to 2.5 million a month. Okay, it's definitely possible, but like you really got to be hitting on all cylinders and just have a complete banger of a company to scale those types of businesses past that. They're very good to scale to $1 million a month, 1.5. We were very confident in that. But with our profit split, like, we needed them to do 30 to 50 million a piece to really make it worth our while. So we kind of made a pivot within our holdco strategy. What we did is we let go of all of the companies in the portco, or all the portfolio companies, except for one. And the one we kept was a medical clinic that was a brick and mortar. And the reason we did that is because it had the highest growth potential. Like I felt like it could definitely hit 9 figures, and it definitely had the highest X potential, without a doubt, because again, it's a brick and mortar. It was more of a product-based business. It's not all based around the founder, et cetera. So we ended up renegotiating that deal, letting go of all of our other stuff, and we created a new structure, an MSO structure, basically, because I'm not a physician, where we took 50% of that company. And what happened next was one of the craziest experiences of my life, to be quite frank. So we took that business from one location and 50K a month to 6 locations and 3 million a month in 14 months, which was insane, right? So you might think, okay, that sounds awesome. Cole finally made it. Well, I still had a bunch of problems, but to understand that, I got to recap some things, okay? So this brings me to the beginning of the year in 2024, okay? So at the beginning of the year, 2024, I had 3 companies, okay? So our B2B sales recruiting and training was doing about 2.5 million a month. Our B2C sales training was doing about 1.5 million a month, maybe a little bit less than that, because again, those two never combined have done more than 4, but very close, like 3.8, 3.9, so maybe 1.4. And then our medical clinic, like I said, 3 million a month. So we were doing about 7 million a month, which was super close to that 9-figure run rate that I've been like chasing, my entire career. But here is the problems, okay? Issue number 1 is my other 2 businesses, because I wasn't focusing on them, their profits all went down by about 25%. Okay, like the operational complexity of the labor went up. We were kind of sustaining. So the numbers were okay on the top line, but the profit was slowly going down and slowly going down. So because I had 50% of this medical clinic, obviously I was making some great profit with that. But at the same time, in the beginning of the year 2024, I'm doing 7 million a month, all top line. I look at my profit and I'm like doing barely more than I was doing before I even started this. And in fact, it was about the same. So I'm like, okay, now I'm doing so much work. Like I'm scaling 3 multiple 8-figure companies basically, and it's all for the same profit. Like, okay, I got to be doing something wrong. Issue number 2 is I was insanely burned out, right? I'm an operator by nature. I like to be involved. I don't like to just like have some, none of this was where I was like putting money in, buying the company. Like all of this was, we were coming in as real operating partners and helping scale up the marketing and sales. So because of that, my team was stretched too thin. I was stretched too thin. We were putting out fires. Personally, I had no time to focus on any constraints within the business meaningfully. So I was just like putting out fires, wearing a ton of hats, not really doing anything effectively at all. And then the issue number 3, and this is the big one, and this is really the whole point of this video, is I got to this point and I realized I could probably make more long-term with way less stress with one company utilizing some of the lessons I'm going to share with you in a second. And this realization is ultimately what led me to shut down 2 out of these 3 companies, okay? So I'll explain why. So basically, this was the model that we did. It looks a little bit confusing on the screen, but basically we had the whole co at the top. The whole co owns obviously the B2B, half of the medical clinic, and the B2C. Okay, the B2B is very simple. 1 funnel, 1 sales team, 1 fulfillment / back end ascension retention. Okay, the B2C, same exact thing. We have 1 funnel, 1 sales team, 1 fulfillment, back end ascension retention. So with both of these, we just had 1 marketing director, 1 sales director. Very, very simple. With the medical clinics though, we did something a little bit differently. We had funnel A, funnel B, and funnel C. Okay, so 1 marketing department, but they did 3 different acquisition funnels, like 3 different offers. Okay, and then under those, there was a sales director on profit share for each of the corresponding offers. Okay, so we had 3 different sales directors essentially, and then they would all filter the clients in from those front end customers into 1 fulfillment / back end. So what was beautiful about the medical model, and while it scaled so fast, is that essentially what had happened is we had 3 people in the company independently driving revenue all at the same time. That's why the growth was like insanely explosive. And it was similar to when I went from 100 grand a month to 2.5 million a month. We had 2 companies. So I had 2 revenue leaders really driving that growth along with me at the same time. So really 3 people driving that growth. And that's what really made that explosive growth. The same thing happened with the medical company. But what I had realized at this stage is that, at the end of the day, sure, I had different businesses and there were different markets, but what really made this top line number so large is I had 5 effective funnels that were all doing above $1 million or $2 million a month a piece. And then within those, I had 5 savage sales directors all doing that. And I asked myself, well, why do I need multiple different companies to do this? Like I could have all of this under 1 company. And what was funny is even at this point, 75% of my profit was coming from the B2B. So that was still where I was making all of my money, but I was focusing on all of this other stuff. And I was wondering, man, what if I just cut everything, kept the B2B, and then expanded the vision for that to where I could have multiple profit divisions and sales directors all within the B2B. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So here's what's going to drive this home. So here's our old model for the B2B. You know, we had the B2B company. It has one funnel, one marketing director, one sales director, one sales team, and then that goes into one fulfillment, and then the fulfillment back upsells them into our back end, which has renewals and stuff, right? That's kind of where our recurring revenue is, very basic. So here's our new model, right? And so I cut those other two companies, and what I'm doing is really kind of taking the strategy I had and all putting it under this model. So we have 2 inbound marketing funnels, okay? And then for each of those 2 inbound marketing funnels, we have 2 different sales directors. And then we have our outbound SDR and outbound AE team. So we have a 3rd division that's basically just outbound. Then we have a 4th division, the strategic partnerships and events. And then there's a separate team that closes only those deals. And then another thing I've been really focusing on, hence making this video, is branding and organic content and trying to drive more leads that way as well. That doesn't go to a separate sales team, but as you can see here, now we have 4 separate sales directors, 4 separate profit divisions, okay? 4 separate ways, completely different ways to sell the same product, okay? But it still all goes into the same fulfillment and ultimately the same backend. So the beauty of this is that we have multiple divisions with their own leaders, all independently driving revenue, but it's still, again, funnels into the same fulfillment and backend and ascension retention. So what this does is it gives us the growth of having multiple businesses without the operational complexity of having all the different products and fulfillment systems and finance and all of this stuff of those multiple businesses, which in turn really maximizes the profit. Now, is this going to give me to 7 million a month? I don't know. Okay. But what I can tell you almost for certain is this shift, it was 2 or 3 steps backwards to take a step forward, but I'm very confident this will get us to 40, 50, 60 million a year. And in doing so though, at the end of the day for the owners, which is me, have way more profit and way less stress and just be an overall much healthier and just better company. Like I would rather have one extraordinary company than 3 companies that are just above average because I'm spread so thin. So hopefully this makes sense. So kind of going all the way back to the story, once I realized this in my head, this was beginning of January 2024, I shut down RCA. I gave the equity I had of the medical clinic back to the owner, partner, doctor that I was working with. And I decided to go all in on the B2B. So that's what I'm doing now is I have one company. It's very, very nice, much less stress than it was before. And we're really building the infrastructure I told you about earlier. Now, does this mean that holdcos are stupid and it's a scam and all this stuff? Absolutely not. Like people do crush it with this. And there could even be a place that I do it again in the future. And this is what I want to share with you though, of what I would do differently if I got into acquisitions again. So a couple lessons. Number 1, I would buy companies that are synergistic or add value to my current company. I mean, that's the first thing I would look for. So for example, like one of the biggest ways we can scale our company is by buying either media platforms or other companies that allow us to get into more higher level mid-market or enterprise deals. So for instance, we could buy a recruiter that's in a different niche that has a bunch of contracts that we would want to use for sales recruiting. We can help that recruiter scale through developing their marketing and sales systems, but also cross-sell their clients into much, much bigger sales recruiting contracts, right? So like that's an example. Or maybe it's just a media company that has those clients we can buy and then refer those people to us, similar to how when HubSpot acquired The Hustle, for instance. Okay. The other thing I would change is any acquisition I would ever do in the future, I would only do majority control. Now, minority control is fine if you're going to be relatively uninvolved or if you're just going to be consulting and giving advice, right? Because then you're not really operating the business. But for me, if I'm involved operating the business, which I was in every single acquisition I did, I would want, again, 51% plus, right? If like I'm going to be doing the marketing and sales, which is really 50% of the business, I want pretty much the majority control. I want 51%. So I have control over everything. I can make sure it operates effectively. I can make sure there's a good sync between marketing and sales all the way to fulfillment, ascension and retention, and all of those things. Okay. Now, if I went the whole co route again, where I just bought unrelated companies only with the intention to grow them, what I would do is buy bigger companies by raising equity or borrowing debt or both, And so I would look for companies that had really sound operations, fulfillment finance, maybe grew to 10 million a year through strictly word of mouth referrals. And I can just look at it and be like, man, if we install our marketing and sales systems in here, we're going to double this thing in like 2 years. Okay. That would be the perfect acquisition to me. Because the thing is if you focus, or for me, if I focus on the 2 to 5 million range, which is a lot more affordable, you can get the seller financing and all of that stuff. The issue there is I'm a really great operator. I could probably just copy that business with a partner and then scale it to that level very, very quickly. So it kind of it's not a solution for me, which kind of brings me to our next point. The other thing I would consider is doing more of a venture studio route, where it's finding a business we would want to go into, finding the CEO from the very beginning and the CRO or whoever's going to implement my marketing and sales systems, and just taking that from 0 to 5 to 10 million a year and then selling it. Right. And just not even have to worry about taking it from 10 to 20 to 20 to 30 or whatever, just selling it right to private equity from 0 all the way to 10 million, because that just aligns with our skill set so much better. We're really good at going from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10, right? I've never built a company to 100 million a year. So why am I going to acquire a company doing 2 to 3 million when I can recreate that very quickly to scale it to 10? It just doesn't make sense. Okay. So a couple of things is, if you want to see how we can help your business, there's a link in the description of different ways that we can help you scale up in your business, no matter what business that you're in. If you do want a more in-depth video of what every stage of my journey looked like, there's a quick video on the screen that breaks it down way more in depth, but that was it. Thanks for watching the video.